Hello, everyone, and welcome to Setting the Stage, the first installment of the Better Together series brought to you by JFF's Postsecondary Network. I'm Jennifer Freeman, Senior Director at JFF. As we've all said countless times in the past year, we are living in uncertain and volatile times, but the work we're engaged in together is more important than ever. So we really thank you for taking the time to join us in this effort and to join with colleagues from across the country. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Stacy Clausen, who's an Associate Vice President at JFF, to kick us off.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Postsecondary Network Better Together series. My name is Stacy Clausen, Associate Vice President for JFF, and we at JFF are excited to have you with us. Although nothing can replace our in-person biennial network meetings, we're happy to be together virtually. This series represents an evolution of JFF's long-standing post-secondary network. The PSN dates back to 2004, 17 years ago now, starting with Achieving the Dream and the early days of focusing on access, completion, and student success. The network has grown over the past 17 years through initiatives like Developmental Education Initiative and Completion by Design. And from the launch of the first Arkansas Student Success Center in 2010 to the 16-state network reaching over 78% of students of color in 52% of community colleges in the country. Whether you've been attending PSN events for 17 years or if this is your first one, we're so excited to have you. In fact, the fact that you're here means you're already part of our network. We believe deeply in the power of the PSN to advance real change in economic mobility. For those of you who were here with us in Seattle last January, a year ago, which feels like a lifetime ago, we shared our vision for the future. Could we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Our vision for the future in which people of all ages, especially Black learners and people of color, can access and benefit from learning opportunities that meet them where they are, prepare them for the future of work, and lead to economic mobility. All supported through an integrated ecosystem of learning, workforce, and community organizations. Although cross-sector collaborations are not new, and there's successful examples in every state, we believe that more system-wide partnerships are essential for economic advancement in the future of work. This virtual series is designed to explore what that integrated ecosystem might look like and how we can collaborate. I hope you'll join us for the full series. Jenny Freeman will be back at the end of the session today, talking more about the 5 upcoming sessions, or you can reference them at JFF's Building Together series webpage. I'll now pass the mic to our MCs for this session, Lucretia Murphy and Joel Vargas. One of our goals for this series and for the future of the PSN is to share more about the breadth and depth of our expertise at JFF. So we're starting off with 2 of our amazing colleagues who together have worked across many different facets of the learning and work ecosystem. Hey, Joel, passing to you.
Thanks, Stacy. You can see I'm so excited that I left in a little early. Sorry about that. Step over your words. And thanks for inviting me to MC this. I'm Joel Vargas, everyone. I'm a Vice President of Programs at JFF. I'm really thrilled about today, this event, and your participation, and that you've taken your valuable time to choose to join us today. And I'm also thrilled to have the opportunity to share the screen stage, if you will, with my longtime treasured colleague, Lucretia, who we fondly call Cree, her nickname. And it's just always a pleasure to get a chance to work with her. So I'm going to turn it over to her in just one sec, but I just want to start by saying I oversee a wide array of our efforts at JFF to transform our education and workforce in the United States. And in particular, and germane to our event today, my work is focused on promoting partnerships between K-12 high schools and employers, to integrate high school with college and careers. We've also focused on cross-sector efforts, focused on building regional level systems changes that support better conditions for economic mobility and stronger educational attainment for underserved young adults. So that's enough about me for the time being. Cree, you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Joel. And I am really so glad to be here, so glad to be with all of you joining today, and really look forward to when we can be in person. But what a great opportunity to come together as we think about the work ahead and the work that needs to be done, and to be able to do it all together. I am a senior director at Jobs for the Future, and kind of germane to this network, I do work with community college partnerships as they work with nonprofits, community-based organizations, employers, and other partners to develop strategies for families who are living in poverty and or individuals as well, to be able to help them to move towards economic mobility. And I do work at JFF across really population groups as well. So have a real focus on young adults as they move towards economic mobility, and also for people to have opportunities for economic mobility while they're incarcerated and or after they leave incarceration, as a way to really make sure that we are disrupting some of those insidious pipelines that we have that lead some communities, and especially communities of color, not from school to college, but from school to prison. So this is really a great opportunity to reimagine what that could be with the new ecosystem that this great team at JFF is envisioning. So I'm so glad to be here with you all.
Thanks, Cree. But just a word about JFF and kind of the relevance of today to our mission. All the work that Lucretia and I described, and others that our colleagues do, whether it's with policymakers, employers, school systems, colleges, workforce development boards, mission-driven tech innovators, and others, it all focuses on the vision we want to realize, which is a society in which economic advancement is attainable for all by driving transformation of the American workforce and education system so that everyone has the skills, the resources, and the credentials needed to achieve economic advancement. So why don't we go to the next slide? Just a word about the way in which we do our work. We endeavor to work with partners to design and implement innovative evidence-based solutions and to bring them to scale through networks and technology, and through influence strategies, including shaping policy conversations and also investing, as you'll see there, in the incubation and acceleration of impactful strategies. This series of events is just one example of how we activate and connect diverse groups of impactful people like yourselves to drive important national conversations and to develop and disseminate new insights. So Lucretia, you want to talk about how this event fits into that work?
Certainly. So as Stacy mentioned earlier, this is the kickoff series. So yay you for being here on the ground floor. And there will be subsequent series later that Jenny Freeman will give you more details on. But the focus of this Better Together series is really to think about what are the strategies and what are the opportunities that are available for people to work together, for community colleges to leverage all the resources and expertise that they have, but as well bring in other partners to bear on the tough questions that we're facing now. So it's really going to be guided by the question that was alluded to earlier. How can we develop an ecosystem approach to be able to work with others across the community, education, private sector, workforce development, in order to create a post-secondary system that really advances equitable economic mobility? So the series will give us a way of thinking about that from different perspectives, and hopefully it gives you all an opportunity among a group of your peers, even though it's virtual, to share thoughts either in the chat or by raising your hand and being called on, to be able to create a community of folks looking to be better together through this work. Hopefully, as participants, you'll walk away committed and maybe renewed around work that you're already doing, and have some tools and resources to design inclusive pathways as well. Next slide. One of the things we want to ground in is kind of why are we doing this? Stacy went through the list of significant accomplishments in the 17 years that JFF has been hosting this. And I think that one of the things that we want to think about is why now? Even when times were better, when times were normal, we were nowhere near where we wanted to be in terms of the number of people who had education beyond high school, and those who really had the post-secondary education needed to be less vulnerable, right, in these rough times. So one of the things that we want to think about in the now is, and we can go to the next slide for this, is that we don't want our new normal to be what the old normal was. As we think about where we want to go, we don't want to be living in a time where all we do is get from horrible to a time where we didn't want to go. And COVID has really, really pushed us far. So as we think about COVID, we know that anybody can get the disease, but not everybody is suffering the same way. Really unequal education and economic impacts. It's diminished the likelihood to people are 2 times as likely to cancel their college plans if their family incomes are under $75,000. Exactly the people that we want to be taking advantage of a college opportunity and a credentialing pathway are the most likely not to be able to go. We're seeing skyrocketing unemployment, and we know that it's hitting people who are less educated. And we also know that the impacts are predictably impacting people of color, the young, and in those places where there's intersection, particularly women of color, as those jobs are more vulnerable to being lost during this pandemic. So one of the things that I think we really, really want to think about is how do we invest? What do we want to do now so that we're looking at a future that's much better than our past and also helps us recover from the really hard hits that we've taken now? So Joel, I'll turn it back over to you. And the next slide.
Thanks, Cree. So this is the second time you're seeing this slide here. I think what we're trying to communicate here is that for the country to build back stronger and to do so in a way that's truly is more inclusive, all inclusive, if you will, and that dismantles racial and economic inequality. As we have to work together in fundamentally new ways. Single institutions and systems cannot tackle these issues alone. We need to build systems that enable students to access and succeed in post-secondary education, and that comprise partnerships between communities, organizations, and others in the ecosystem that we depict here. Together, we're going to need to build pathways for workers that result in good jobs, family-sustaining wages, and opportunities for advancement, while working with employers to build up strong, inclusive regional economies to support economic growth. And we're going to need to build strategies together that reach learners and workers throughout their lifetimes to adapt to and thrive in the ever-evolving future of work, which is with us now. So, this all requires, in our view, an ecosystem approach. Your participation today in this event and throughout the series is really critical to this effort. And we really thank you again for joining us. You all represent different parts of this ecosystem that we've depicted here. So why don't we find out a little bit more about who's with us here today? We're gonna use a tool called Mentee Meter for this, and you see a slide here with the instructions that I'll also verbalize. We're gonna drop this link in the chat, www.mentee.com. And on your phone or your browser, when you get there, just please enter the code 1854967. And I see colleague Rachel has dropped that into the chat. So again, go to that link and then enter the code that's on the slide, 1854967. We'll just we'll give you a few minutes to answer the questions there. We're curious about what type of organization or institution you work for, community college, state system office, workforce board. You'll see the options there. We'd also like to know who has attended the post-secondary network meeting before, even though, as Stacy said at the top, that's evolving, and we're expanding that both in focus and participation. And what's one thing you hope to learn from this series? And I don't know, Lucretia, you want to see what's coming in a minute once people have had a chance to start taking their poll?
I know, I love word clouds.
We got community college in the lead, but I see a number of different organizations as well.
Nonprofits are coming up: student success centers, workforce development, intermediaries. That's great. And I wonder, so how does this show up? Will each question show up? So this one is, what type of institutions and organizations do you work for? I think community colleges are, oh, great, K through 12 office. I hadn't seen that one before. Technical colleges, state organizations. And feel free to add in the chat if you want to add any specifics about what you were able to click in. And here's the next question. Oh, I saw it for a second and it went away. There we go. How many PSN events have you attended? Oh, this is really exciting to see how many. This is your first. So welcome, kind of our kickoff series, and you are really giving us a good flavor of what to expect. That's wonderful. Just one or two, more than 5. Thank you for the veterans. I'm very excited to hear what you have to share. Oh, this is so exciting. The number of people that are meeting the network through this engagement. That's so exciting. And we look forward to having you stay with the series and continue to stay with this network. This is great. And then what's the one thing you hope to learn from this virtual series? Best practices, collaboration techniques, growing partnerships. A lot of, I want to know what works. That's great. We're happy that you're here to talk about this. Rural solutions, that's wonderful. And I hope the folks that put that, if there were more than one or just one, really press on that, because that's really something that we need to think about. The context and place matters, and how to really think about that work from the different places. Policy implications, national trends, expanding work, growing partnerships, developing a business plan. These are all very exciting. And I think you'll see that the team has pressed on that. How to learn from the past, but not repeat it. That's kind of a general amen for life. So thank you for putting that in here. And strategies for engaging new partners. Excellent. I think those will be really exciting things to think about. You all have brought to bear, I think, with the diversity of the people participating, a diversity of things you hope to learn, but all very important and speaking exactly to the reason why we do this work in partnership. Because no one institution could possibly either contribute or benefit from all of these learnings. And so it'll be great to think about how together we expand our learning and really expand our capacity to implement. So this is all very exciting. So what we wanted to be able to do and offer for you all now is an ability to kind of hear from folks to speak about these different issues. So we'll go to the first of our videos that we have for you all now. And in this video, it's really going to focus on the first theme of why do partnerships and cross organizational collaboratives. Not to be dismissive of anybody, we all know it's hard to work with people. So why don't we just put our heads down, go as fast as we can, and then hold hands when we get to the end. And I think part of what this work is about is really making the case that you can go further if you work together. So slide, we'll hear from Aaron Fitchner, the president of New Jersey Council of County Colleges, Tina Fries-Decker, the president and CEO of Spectrum Health, and Dr. Felicia D Williams, the president of community colleges, to really speak to this issue of partnerships and collaboration.
The challenges that we face are great. We have a real responsibility in the education workforce space to do better than we've done in the past and to really break down those silos.
I know that we're better when we work together, and we can likely solve some of the easy problems ourselves, but we know that our world and our industries are part of a larger ecosystem, especially now. So to really make an impact, we need to solve the complex multifactorial problems with partners, with collaboration, and with some compromise.
The type of response that we need and that our community needs is larger than any one sector, meaning the type of response we need is larger than what a community college can do alone. It is larger than what any government sector can do alone. It is larger than what business and industry can do alone. It is larger than what the nonprofit sector can do alone. While we have shared aspirations, shared goals in terms of wanting the good, highest quality of living for our community, we tackle it in very different ways. So this is the time where we really need to marshal our forces, and we have to find ways to integrate better.
Well, I really appreciate those inspiring words. And I don't know, just reflecting on it, and want to ask Lucretia also to weigh in as well about what it conjures for her. One of the themes that really struck me is that this problem, this challenge is larger than us singularly. In the past, I've really seen and supported this sentiment from the perspective of driving in innovations in normal times, right, which had a lot of inequities already, and we really had to try to move the needle, and that required partnership. But I think what this year's crises, have really added is the newfound element of real urgency that you hear in people's voices there and accounts. So, it's understandable. It's like, how are we going to re-engage students so many who've left high school and college, for example, and we don't necessarily know where are they, right? And how do we reskill workers whose jobs and career sectors shrank or disappeared overnight? And I guess what I've seen as I've talked to folks in the field is that organizations are really stepping up. And as they step up, they're also increasingly stepping across their silos to do this. So that's really heartening to see. And I think you heard from leaders who are really doing that and embody that work. So, I would just add as well, policymakers have recognized the importance of this too. I'd like to have them see and do more about that. But just one example is Colorado directed a portion of their CARES Act funding to a P20 innovation fund to help schools address the learning challenges related to the economic, social, and health impacts of COVID through strengthening and formalizing linkages between P12, higher ed, and industry. So those are really promising signs, and I encourage you to do the same. Cree, what does this make you think of?
I would echo you, Joel, and I think in some ways these partnerships can also help us be more nimble in places where the community college may have a barrier, the community-based organization may have a workaround, or an employer may be able to subsidize. And so I think even though sometimes it feels as though the work to build the collaborative takes more time, sometimes that's where you can also find time too. Partners can give you cover, partners can give you resources. I think another piece, Joel mentioned this, that in this time when people are actually disappearing, right? Their jobs ended, their schools have closed, they're not continuing to do virtual learning, people are in their homes, but they are connected somewhere. They're connected to some organization, they're connected to some group. And I think by having partners, you're more likely to find the people most vulnerable to being left behind as we move past COVID and into our recovery. And I'm curious too, I know that there are folks on the phone too who have thoughts to share about this. And if you just want to raise your hand, our behind the scenes wizards can help unmute you. And I see Marcia Ballinger, and I'm wondering if she could be unmuted, or Marcia, if you unmute yourself, what are your thoughts as you think about collaboration and where you see the energy for collaboration?
Yeah. Thanks so much, Cree, and I really appreciate the webinar today. And I'm from Lorain County Community College in Ohio, and we've been a part of JFF's secondary policy network for quite some time. So I'm one of the veterans that you spoke about earlier. And when I looked at, Joel, the diagram that you showed with regard to the ecosystem, it made me reflect and reminded me of one of the ones that partnerships that we launched this fall that truly did embrace the economy, public funds, policy, innovation, and education. And just I'll share a little bit more about that, which was through short-term credentials and pre-apprenticeships that were offered totally free for individuals, because we were able to braid funding together and work with our workforce partners in the community, Jobs and Family Services, and others. And it's been so important, not only because of COVID and the pandemic and everything that has been impacting our communities, but when we look at Lorain County, which is about 20 miles outside of Cleveland, only 4.7% of individuals who are born into the lowest socioeconomic quintile ever rise to the top of that during his or her lifetimes. When we dig a little deeper, we see our two largest communities, Elyria and Lorain, each of which have over 40% of households headed by single women who have children under the age of 18 who live in poverty. So this is the part of the why for us. It's so critically important, not only during normal times, but how we had to quickly transform and build upon what community colleges do. So we unveiled this fall, and this was possible because of policy change that occurred at the state level through the lieutenant governor and governor. They created a program called Tech Cred. And what Tech Cred did is it really connected the business community with what were the highest in-demand jobs, and promised and paid the employers $2,000 per employee for up to $30,000 per round. And then the community colleges, and so it wasn't just Lorain County community colleges, you can look throughout the state of Ohio at other community colleges that we might have had credentials or certificates, but we created these technical credentials, if you will, Tech Cred, that are short term, that could be completed in 16 weeks or less. And these are in high demand areas. So it was computer and IT, engineering and manufacturing. And it was also really important for us to design these in a way that ensured that they could lead on to then a longer term certificate, as well as then an associate's degree. But from the employer perspective, and having individuals who were quickly dislocated and displaced because of the pandemic, the opportunity and ability to get connected to an employer and a job very, very quickly. So it was the Governor's Office on Workforce Transformations. We introduced at Lorain County Community College 21 of the fast track short-term programs. And we worked back then with our workforce development agency in the community and held the virtual information sessions, connected with employers, and everyone who went through the program earned an industry recognized credential as a part of it. So this happened during the fall semester. And as we've analyzed the results of that, what I am so incredibly excited about is that our enrollment showed us that 41% of the individuals who were enrolled were from underrepresented groups in our community, specifically from the Hispanic, Latino communities, as well as our Black and African American residents. That compares to our overall student population and community population of about 12%. So when you were sharing the data about those who are being disproportionately impacted, we know that this program is working. And so it really exemplifies, I think, that coming together of your entire ecosystem. And we're expanding upon that now for the spring semester and going forward. This is one of those that the innovation quickly enabled us to scale it, and it's going to stay with us for the forthcoming future.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that great work, Marcia. And we invite people to share. Please feel free to write in the chat any other examples that you have about collaboration and partnerships that you're working with. We're going to go to the second video, which really will feed into and help us expand this conversation for discussion. The second video really is going to tee into what the collaboration means for the learners. So from the institution being able to provide more resources, and this one, the learners.
The first thing is, what do we still believe about our mission as community colleges? Do we still believe that part of our mission is this democratizing of education? Do we still believe in our workforce education agenda? Do we believe in this commitment to equitable outcomes for our students? And if we have a resounding yes about that, then we have to continue with another layer of questions that are surrounding who was here pre-pandemic that we no longer see? Who wasn't here pre-pandemic that we need to extend a better invitation to join us?
So in the state of Colorado, number one, we know that we have to come together to tackle the biggest issues. When we think about economic development, when we think about racial justice, and when we think about equity in talent development and in employment, we know it's bigger than any one entity. We also know that everyone is going to benefit when we put together the right pieces of infrastructure to meet the individual needs, to help individual groups achieve their goals and also achieve the broader goals as well.
And so that connection with the college to be able to allow us to do those things and support us by giving us the information that we can share with the tutors is really important, because it's their curriculum, it's what they're teaching. And if we didn't have that bond and that relationship of really looking at barriers that members are facing, they would be kind of lost, especially when they're first logging on for the first time in a virtual setting, the complications that they have. It is really important that the college is working with us and they say, hey, if somebody's not in class, we know that they're not in class and we can call them. And all of these things happen in real time. So for me, I think the communication and the partnership with the community college makes a huge difference.
We do offer some supports at LaGuardia, which is something we've built out over time. You know, we have a child care center. We do actually also have a food pantry. We have a few things, but it's never going to be as comprehensive as a place like Common Point Queens, because our specialization is education and training, right? So we have some supportive services, but partner with the community, we can offer so much more. And again, it's that relationship. They may have a relationship with someone at Common Point that is going to last over many years, many generations. Very important way for us to be connected to our communities.
Again, such valuable information. You know, Joel, what kind of strikes me is as we've thought about college for so long, we think of one individual who's all they focused on in their whole life is what they're being taught at college. But I think as we think about it now, as we're more open and what these videos have shown, people have very complex lives. And so they need very comprehensive supports, and not all of those supports can be provided by the community college or at the scale that individuals really need them to be provided. And I think the partnership that when the community college from the education piece and the community-based organization from the services piece, it can be a really sophisticated way of providing those services. I'm thinking of what Catherine said, that if the institutions have a good working relationship, they know what courses are being taught, they know what the curriculum is, they know where the difficult parts of the curriculum are, and they can use that information for the tutors, or they can use that information for the advisors at the community college. So they're right in lockstep. And people who are relying on community-based organizations for supports and services aren't left behind because the community college isn't sharing or the community-based organization isn't sharing. So it just seems like a way to provide much more comprehensive supports, because people have complex lives, and much more real-time, sophisticated support as people need it at the time they need it, when they need it, and in the way they need it. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Well, I mean, I think you just about summed it up, and so did the leaders we heard from in the video, or whatever we call that, little with the audio and their photo on there. It reminds me, there have been a lot of collaboratives trying to promote strategies that acknowledge this reality that, in order to reach more learners and help them to be more successful, you need those integrated support systems across K-12, post-secondary, from community-based organizations. There's one collaborative I'm thinking of in particular because I interviewed the director, Amy Smith, as part of this series. And, she is leading something called the All In Link Learning Collaborative in Southern California. It's a real powerful approach that they're promoting. Link Learning has shown really strong evidence of closing equity gaps in education attainment. And, in recognition of the fact that it takes partnerships to make that work well and at scale, All In has been going for a few years and expanding their partnerships between impressive array of K-12 systems there, 2- and 4-year colleges, workforce development boards, and employers. And she did express some fear at the onset of the crisis of the pandemic specifically, that it might drive leaders in the collective back to their silos. It's just like tending to so many urgent needs in their systems. But she said she was heartened to see that it actually did the opposite. If anything, they've redoubled their efforts to work together, because they've seen how powerful their partnership work is and important it is, and vital to changing student outcomes. So that's heartening to hear, and not to downplay. I know that that took a lot of relationship building, time, and trust, and skillful leadership and sacrifice to make happen on behalf of all the leaders at the table there. So just want to acknowledge that. Hard, but can be rewarding work. I am going to be quiet for a second, because again, we want to ask folks who are participating here see if they have some views about, ways that they're looking at in the field, concrete ways that partnership is helping to reach and support learners in their communities. And I know that I see that a longtime colleague of mine, is great to see, Diane Walker. I'd like to see if she can unmute herself just to share her perspective there from Antelope Valley Union High School District in California.
Thanks so much, Joel. And again, I've just loved hearing the different stories from everyone here. They've resonated so much with me. I'm the Director of Industry Liaison and Postsecondary Partnerships for the Antelope Valley Union High School District, and have had the pleasure of working with Joel over a number of years in several JFF initiatives. Just learn so much all the time. And I want to say that everything that you've said is so important, and I agree. In our area, we're at the northernmost reaches of Los Angeles County in the high desert, close to Mojave Air and Spaceport, Edwards Air Force Base. So that kind of gives you a little bit of economic context for our area. We're a majority Hispanic Latino high school district, 60% Hispanic Latino, and about 13% African American Black. Highly diverse, low socioeconomic, and several folks have mentioned the educational attainment level. We're really an interesting mix, because we have a great brain trust for those aerospace industries, but also many people who have not gone beyond high school. So a great mix. And we started our efforts back during the School to Careers era. So I guess you could say, in the words of John Wooden, go slow to go fast. We're doing that. But it has worked for us. We started with a career prep council at that time, which really was industry driven to start those career pathways and academies back in the early 90s. And then about 5 years ago, we had our Antelope Valley East Kern STEM network really step to the fore for homegrown workforce development in the technical fields, engineering particularly, which was a great effort. But I must say, in the last couple of years, and particularly in the last year, we've had so much growth and momentum in these efforts. And I don't know if it's just that the pandemic has put a sharp focus on things to really discover or realize what's important. But I think that's the case. And employers have really stepped up. In California, we have the K-12 Strong Workforce Program grant. We've always had those career pathways and academies, as I've mentioned, but it has really strengthened and cemented some existing relationships with our local community college and those aligned pathways, and expanding the reach through Central and Southern California for our community college region, which by itself really has provided more opportunities for our students to go to different community college programs. Another one that quickly comes to mind is our partnership with Los Angeles County Department of Human Relations and Human Resources and Social Services, DPSS. We've always had those sort of social services there, but they really have started to realize that we would benefit in creating those pathways to have homegrown social services. And so that's another great opportunity for our students, particularly in that equity and access focus. And then another that just has crystallized in the last year, we've had ongoing efforts over the last couple of years to have a collaborative effort among our community partners, our city leaders, stakeholders across different sectors to combine and merge two economic development and advocacy groups, organizations in our area into a more cohesive whole to meet the existing and emergent needs of that equitable economic development, education, very similar to what you were talking about in the P20 area. So employers, as I said, have stepped up. We're really reaching a common vision, breaking down those silos. And in a way, the pandemic has facilitated that because of those virtual meetings, allowing more discussions without everybody having to leave their office or home or organization in order to get together. And if you can be thankful for something as bad as that, that's it. And I have to apologize. That's the dog snoring. It's not me, I promise.
Thank you so much, Diane. And, you know, like everyone here, we all have revealed a different side of ourselves in this crisis and needing to interact in this format. Really appreciate your contributions here, but like more importantly, just the longstanding, you know, I think your perspective is a good reminder. These things take time to develop. You have to stick with them. And there are moments like these, even unusual, that we could not have expected, where we accelerate that momentum and adapt in new ways. And it's, I just want to thank you for your leadership in doing all that, and for joining us and joining our network. So I think we are a little pressed for time here, which is great. We're right on time. So I think what I'll do is just thank you for being here, and just thank Lucretia for her co-MC-ship. But Lucretia, you want to say a word before we turn it back over to our team?
I'll say and thank you all for the feedback, and hope that the chat keeps going on and on. But I think now we can turn it over to Jenny.
Great. Thank you, Joel and Cree, and hello again, everyone. And thank you, Diane, for that the laugh about your snoring dog. That was great. Perfect moment in a pandemic webinar. So today we set the stage, and now I'd like to share what's coming next and talk about how you can engage. Over the course of the next 5 events, we're going to be exploring different aspects of the ecosystem represented in this graphic. We're going to be showcasing innovative models and successful partnerships across the work and learning ecosystem, and really dive into how they work and what impact they have. Because as many people have said, it's not that it's easy, but that there are benefits to be gained in terms of impact on your organizations and your communities. So we're also going to explore the influencers of the ecosystem, those entities around the outside of the circle, policy, philanthropy, technology, and innovation. And we're going to connect with other participants and leaders from across the country. So our goal ultimately is to really help you, everyone, members of the Postsecondary Network, which you all are, to map out strategic partnerships and achieve your goals and fulfill your missions. If we could go back to slide 14, slide 15. I'd like to talk about the event coming up on January 26th, exploring strategic alignment between philanthropy and the work and learning ecosystem. We're starting here because philanthropy plays a really critical role as one of those influencers on education and workforce systems. We're going to be joined by a number of philanthropists, facilitated by Shira Reed. And you're going to be able to discuss with these grant makers what drives their investments. You're going to be able to learn about how to shape funder investments and how to identify common goals with funders so that you can access funding from funders that have diverse areas of interest. And in particular, you're going to hear about and be able to discuss how partnerships can help you leverage diverse sources of funding. So on the next slide, the next 2 episodes 3 and 4, will move away from the influencers and into the circle and look at building partnerships across the ecosystem with local and state level actors. On February 17th, our session is Partnering to Reach New Learners. So during this session, we're really diving into those critical post-secondary access points. It's really going to be about how to broaden your reach and your impact on the people who lack access and especially now are struggling to access post-secondary education and training opportunities, but really need them to achieve economic security. The ecosystem partners that we're going to be exploring in this session include community-based organizations, adult basic education providers, and the K-12 system, the folks that are represented on this slide. You'll learn how to better serve adults who face systemic barriers to success, and learn to talk about breaking down those barriers, and engage with the K-12 pipeline to build pipelines for pathways for young people to a strong future. So in episode 4, moving on to the next slide, episode 4 is all hands on deck, redesigning pathways by putting people first. That's on March 4th. And in this session, we're going to highlight those parts of the ecosystem that really are essential for to ensure that post-secondary programs lead to economic mobility and meaningful careers. So the partners that we're going to be exploring here are the workforce system, employers, and four-year institutions. We'll really look at what those partnership efforts need to be to increase equity and to break down systemic barriers. In this session, we'll talk about building deep and systemic partnerships around mutual goals. So partnerships that go beyond programmatic solutions, but that really builds systems that support equitable economic mobility. And those systemic partnerships are when you build systems and not just work on individual programs, it also becomes the easier and a more integrated part of the work. Moving on to the next slide, the next 2 episodes will zoom back out. So in these 2 episodes, we're going to look again at the policy and funding environment influencing the ecosystem. Episode 5 is how federal and state policy supports or harms equitable education and employment outcomes. It takes place on March 25th. So we're going to look at state and federal policies that influence partnerships across education and workforce development stakeholders. We're going to look at policies that incentivize collaboration, and you're going to leave with examples of policy reforms that can really facilitate your partnerships, and with policy solutions that you can advocate at the state level to support the kind of partnerships that help you further your work and your goals. And finally, we're going to be looking at new reforms that are being proposed by the new administration, and those will inform how you pursue partnerships, what partnerships might be most strategic. And then lastly, our final session is called Money Matters, Leveraging Public Funding for Greater Impact, April 8th. Here, we're going to investigate multiple state and funding opportunities. We're going to look at opportunities that are intended for post-secondary institutions, but also those that can be leveraged through partnerships with others, and with an emphasis on those that can only be emphasized or leveraged through partnerships with others, which is another, as Cree and others have pointed out, a really key part of building these partnerships. So we're going to be looking at funding sources that touch the workforce system, CBOs, human service systems, and industry. So you, the participants, are really going to be able to engage funders, to hear how they view cross-sector partnerships, and learn what's driving their investments. And then finally, we're going to talk about how partnerships can strengthen your impact and, as I said, help to leverage funds. So those are the episodes. Let me identify a few ways that you can get involved. If we could go to the next slide. Obviously, you can listen and learn as you're doing today, and we hope you'll join us for the subsequent ones. You can explore. We are going to be curating resources and materials to help you apply to your work what we're talking about and what you're learning about through this series. We hope that you'll engage deeply in future sessions. There'll be opportunities to connect more with other participants. And also we're going to be producing some discussion guides and help you to engage in conversation in your institutions and in your communities. And then finally, we really want to help you plan. We hope that this will motivate you to begin to pursue some additional strategic partnerships or build on strengthening ones that you have. We're going to be debuting a planning tool to help participants really dig in and to assemble teams in your local communities to figure out what those partnerships look like and applying strategies that you learned through the series. So that is the series. Before you go, I want to ask you to please open the link that is in the chat. That link is just a few brief survey questions. It will really help us to shape our upcoming sessions so that we can make sure to focus on the issues that are most important to you and answer the questions that are top of mind for you. So thank you so much for joining us today. You'll be receiving a follow-up email with resources and a recording. Please share those with your colleagues. Please share invitations with your colleagues and your communities, and we will see you soon. Thanks a lot.